Deb, you made it down here right on time. Exactly when we said we were going to start recording. Kudos to you. Because you made it here on the exact time that we were supposed to start recording, do you remember your homework assignment?
Yes.
Do you remember it, or are you just saying yes in hopes that I'm going to then say it and then you'll say yes,
I'll
exactly
tell you what my
right?
assignment for today was.
Okay.
I was to have watched, of course, the Great British Baking Show.
Which is isn't even an assignment. That's an expectation for 10 weeks.
Okay. So that I consider it an assignment because it requires something away from this desk. Okay.
An assignment to watch a show that we all love and adore. Okay.
That, by the way, people texted me last night that were watching it. And I was home alone, which was a perfect time to watch it. But I said, oh, no, I can't watch it without Kevin. Only to have you come home to say,
do you
I'd already
remember
watched it.
your assignment?
Okay.
Before she starts deflecting everything?
The other assignment, of course, I have the business segment, which is ongoing.
Oh, my gosh. Here we go. Do you remember your assignment?
3 Halloween movies.
There we go.
Okay.
So actually, when I texted you, I said they could be Halloween movies or fall-themed movies.
Oh, I didn't even see the fall themed movies.
It said Halloween/fall.
I just went straight for scary movies.
This is great. This was great. I love that I believe that you and I think very symbiotic. Like you and I sometimes share the same brain.
Yeah.
But then I just give you a task or an assignment and then you just go completely different. I love that. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all.
Well, here's the problem with the Halloween movie thing.
Sure.
Is, as a rule, I don't watch scary movies.
Right.
So I did set some standards for myself.
This is great. This is going to be absolutely great. So at the end of September, I turned to Deb and I said, hey, we had a lot of fun picking Christmas movies last year. Mm-hmm. We watched some fun,
and
different Christmas movies. Yep. Meet Me in St. Louis, not a Christmas movie.
Sorry, Jen.
Arguably the worst movie I've ever watched in my entire life.
I know you love it and it's your favorite movie.
Does
Don't let your childhood memories be destroyed by this.
Women are just absolutely downtrodden and beaten down. And there's Christmas, quote unquote, Christmas in the last 0.5 minutes of the movie. So I said, let's not do Christmas this year. I mean, we still might do Christmas this year, but let's think of like fall Halloween themed movies. We'll only commit to like watch 6 of them over the course of the next month. Correct?
Oh, we were also committing to watch them?
Yeah, ideally.
Oh, geez.
So we'll try to watch them. If not, maybe we've seen some of them and we can lie, but we will try to watch them. And so I just said, hey, any Halloween/fall themed movies you come to the table with. So I'm going to let you start because I had no real expectation. There is no right or wrong answer. It's the movies that you, Deb Z, like that we will watch. And if you at home want to watch too, you certainly can.
Okay. So
no particular order.
I read your instructions as scary movies. Let me just say that. That's what my brain heard. Scary movies.
Can I just read what I texted to you?
Feel free.
So I said, record at noon, ? It is 12:50. Remember to pick 3.
You were so kind earlier and now you can't help yourself.
Remember to pick 3 Halloween/fall themed movies to watch this month.
Okay.
And then you said, I slept in. I have my movies. Business topic. I have to still watch GBBO. 12:30? Again, it's 12:50. But Deb, pick your 3 movies.
You live to make me look terrible.
It's easy, Deb. It's too easy. You set me up for it. You set me up for it.
So this is what you need to know.
Okay.
Scary was in my mind.
Clearly.
And as a rule, I don't watch scary movies.
Fair.
Because they're scary. Mm-hmm. That's why. All right.
This is going to turn out so much better than you even know. I love it.
Okay. So I set some standards for myself because you know how one of the movies I went to first was the first Scream. Is that with Drew Barrymore?
Drew Barrymore in the first 10 minutes. Spoiler alert, she dies. The movie's been out for 25 years.
Yeah. So, but then I don't know that I sat and watched the whole movie.
Okay.
So I literally said to myself, you had to have watched the entire movie.
Okay.
Like really know the whole movie. And then the other standard was to kind of narrow it down because I had kind of a big group.
Yep.
Had to see it in a theater.
So your standards for yourself, again, they are imposed by you. was that you had to have seen the entire movie, which we may or may not watch in full again. And you had to have seen it in the theater.
Right, but I think by your new rules about watching it again, if I've already watched it, then I'm good. I've just eliminated half of the movies.
That's what I'm saying. Okay. We may or may not watch these movies, and we may or may not lie about it.
Let me tell you a couple of movies recently that were scary that I liked, but sadly I didn't watch them in a theater.
Remember, this is the cold open, so we do have some time that we need to get to.
So don't watch The Quiet Place 2 on an airplane.
Ugh, that was awful watching it next to you. You kept jumping out of your seat. It scared the absolute hell out of me every single time.
Exactly.
And then you look at me and be like, so scary.
Because you hadn't watched it yet.
Because I was watching something completely different. I think I was watching like Formula One racing, and you'd be like, oh my gosh, and grab my arm.
I want to say that both of the Quiet Place movies are great. And they would fit the fall scary Halloween kind of thing. But I'm here to tell you I didn't watch them in the movie, so they didn't make the cut. I mean, in the theater. So number one, and I'm going in order of their appearance in the universe. Okay?
Okay.
Number one, The Shining. I mean, come on.
Great movie.
Great movie.
Long movie.
Long movie, which I won't watch again. I
would
can't
say
bear all the hallway scenes and all of that.
That movie on first watch is terrifying.
Terrifying.
It's not as scary because when you know kind of the reveals that happen, but then it becomes more psychological because then you know what's coming and you're like, oh my gosh, what would I do if I was in a hallway and these twin girls kept asking me to come play with them? And then I saw this sign on the mirror written backward that said Red Rum, who's dyslexic. Oh my God, it says murder. That's where the movie is actually good on two fronts. It's terrifying the first time you watch it.
Right.
And then psychologically terrifying the second time and third and fourth and fifth time.
Well, and truth be told, the morphosis of Jack Nicholson's character is like amazing. I mean, he's amazing.
So there are so many documentaries about that movie. One of the ones that I love the most is if you watch it backwards, if you literally just rewind it, it makes as much sense as if you watch it forward.
That's like, some hard metal band that you play their music backwards that encourage you to drink raw eggs and kill yourself. I don't know if I believe that. It's
kind of true, though. I watched parts of it in slow-mo backwards, and you're like, oh, this kind of makes sense in a weird way.
Were you on drugs when you did that, Kevin?
Would have been cool if I was, but I wasn't. Here's the first one that I'm bringing to the table. In the same vein as The Shining, Hocus Pocus.
Hocus Pocus.
Hocus Pocus.
Okay, here's the thing I hate. I don't know if this is a genre. Comedy, horror, is that a genre?
Dark comedy.
That pisses me off.
Hocus Pocus is not dark comedy.
No, but when they try to make me laugh, I'm just saying.
Deb, Hocus Pocus is a kid's movie.
It's the little witches, the cute witches.
The three witches.
Three witches.
In Salem, Mass.
Yeah.
It's all comedy. It's a kid's movie.
Fine,
There's nothing scary about it.
But Hocus Pocus? You picked Hocus Pocus?
I picked Halloween/fall themed movies. There was nothing scary about what I said. Want to know a fun fact about Hocus Pocus?
I do.
Do you know when it originally aired, like what seasonality it came out in?
No, but I'm going to guess it wasn't fall.
July 16th.
Oh my gosh, they worked hard. Right before
a day before my birthday, they released a super duper Halloween themed movie. Did not do well in the box office. Garnered a ton of fame once it ran to VHS because there was no DVDs back in 1993 or whenever it came out.
Right.
So mine is Hocus Pocus. Again, I told you this is going to be a very different list that we're bringing because you interpreted something that wasn't there. Movie number 2 for you, Deb.
Okay. Movie number 2. Now, this has a whole story behind it.
Here we go. Lock and load.
Poltergeist.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Poltergeist. Terrifying. And that little girl, like, was she demon possessed? They're here.
I think she saw him. I don't think she was possessed. I think she could just see him.
No, I agree, but we didn't know at the time.
Got it.
At the time, we didn't know, like, had they gotten inside of her? And then, of course, the whole poltergeist thing is Dominic Dunn, the famous author, his daughter Dominique Dunn was killed 2 years after that. She was murdered. And then the little girl, Carol Ann, whatever her name is in real life.
Carol Ann?
Died like a couple of years after that
Carol
during
Ann?
surgery.
Oh,
so there's this whole, and then there were a couple of ancillary characters. I think there's 4 or 5 total that died. So there's this whole thing around poltergeist and people dying pretty quickly, within a few years after the movie was made. But poltergeist scared the crap out of me, was very good until the very ending. And somehow...
You didn't like the very end?
No, I loved it. They brought it all together in a good way. They finished it tight, which I love because so often especially in scary movies, you'll get a good scary thing and then the plot just falls all apart at the end.
Can you name the dwarf woman who comes in with the glasses?
I can picture her. That little weird voice she has and little
Caroline is with
Caroline, yeah.
the spirits now.
Yeah.
Tangina.
That's her real name?
No, that was a character's name.
Oh, Tangina.
Her real name.
Okay.
Her real name, Zelda.
Okay, well there you go.
My second movie falls almost exactly where Poltergeist stops, is where my movie picks up. The Addams Family.
Oh my God, you really did go sweet and cute. You went G-rated family all
Do
the way.
you remember what is significant about the Addams Family as it relates to our family? Not that we had an Addams Family that lived down the street from us. Shout out Tom, who listens to this podcast. Do you remember what was significant about the Addams Family as it related to the Zener family? These are the childhood memories that I have that mean nothing to my mom.
No.
You guys took me out of class to go watch the movie.
We did?
Yeah.
Oh my God, were we cool parents or what?
I want to say it was like 4th grade. I was picked up randomly. I don't know why.
It was probably a surprise, and
You
we
guys
just thought it would be cool.
Picked me up. We went to the Century Theaters, which is now a parking lot. We went to the big Century Theaters who had the big domes. It was like old school theater seating. And you said we were going to watch the Addams Family. And I was like, okay, this is the greatest thing in the world.
That is awesome that we did that.
Yeah.
That is amazing. I do think I did some cool parenting things. It's just that I don't recall them, so I'm really glad you do.
Yeah, you're lucky that I can remember that you were a good mom.
Thank
All right,
you.
Deb, give us your third and final movie.
Okay, so again, I'm a little strapped in because I had to see it in the theater. That was the standard.
That is, again, the thing that you set yourself.
I think you were there.
Oh.
Blair Witch Project.
Oh my gosh. That is the dumbest movie I've ever seen in my entire life.
Did you think it was dumb when you saw it when you were 15?
I thought it was so stupid.
Okay. That movie scared the crap out of me. I don't know if you remember, we took our neighbor.
Sure
Shelby.
do. Absolutely.
She
terrified. Sat right next to her.
Terrified.
Head in her hands the entire time.
I was scared. Daddy was jumpy. She was like, I thought we were going to have to take her to a mental ward afterwards.
I thought there was something wrong with me the way I wasn't responding to everything.
Oh my gosh.
Everybody in the theater. And now this is kind of, this is like clearly pre-internet viral sensations marketing stuff. It was just billed as a terrifying movie on a budget, right?
Right.
And so what it led people to believe was that they didn't know if it was real or not because it was Steadicam. It was all filmed with camcorders that existed in your own house.
All black and white.
And the budget was $15,000. So people had no idea if it was real or not. And I self-diagnosed, thought I wasn't old enough yet to have that internal fear of what lies around every corner. Mm-hmm. I don't even think I was 15 yet. I want to say I was like 12.
Well, you were 15 when it came out.
Really?
Yeah.
That stuff, the potential for something to be bad, the idea that your brain fills in the gaps of what's hiding in the dark did not exist at that point at all. So none of that resonated with me. And I can remember thinking everybody around me is stupid.
Well, keep this in mind, Peter Pan. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
You just won't go there if you don't have to. I mean, that's
Deb,
truth.
you know me. I will get lost in film. I'm happy to assume a non-character role as it relates to movies. That movie to me, I thought was just so bad. I will not watch that movie again.
I will not watch that movie again.
But we'll tell you that we did.
But I think the thing that the fear part of it, because I think we went to it when it was released. I mean, pretty quick.
Sure.
And so
again, at the Old Century Movie Theater.
I'm literally watching it going, is this a documentary? Is it real? Is it not real?
See, that's what that's what the movie wanted you to believe, is you had no earthly idea if it was real or not. That's what they wanted you to believe.
You mentioned like something like 15,000. I heard a number like 200,000 that it cost to make it all in all.
$15,000.
$248 million at the box office.
Because then the other one that came shortly after that was Paranormal Activity, and that was all filmed in a San Diego condo for like $300,000.
Yeah, and so unbelievable. I mean, kudos to them for that.
So actually, I will say this: my last movie is very similar to the Blair Witch Project. So we'll be kind of close in this way. Stepmom with Susan Sarandon, Julia Roberts, and Ed Harris.
Oh dear God! Don't even. No. Okay, first of all, I have watched that movie 1,000 times.
Sob.
Okay.
Sob.
Second of all, let me tell you this. It's in the beginning, it's the only movie where I'm kind of like, do I hate Julia Roberts?
Yeah.
I mean, and then I'm kind of like, man, Susan Sarandon, ugh. And then I kind of feel bad for Ed Harris, the guy that dumped his wife. Do you know what I mean? and then of course the kids are a whole different thing. But the sobbing, convulsed.
Deep guttural sobbing.
And I have seen it so many times, I can't tell you. But when Susan Sarandon dances with the kids, Ain't No Mountain High Enough, that I will dance around the room while tears are streaming down my cheeks. I mean, literally love that movie.
So I think it's a fall-based movie.
It is. It is very much
and
so.
It's clearly about relationships and families going through divorce and a new quote-unquote parent being introduced. And if you haven't seen it, and you want to get lost in your feels and you want to believe that human beings can still get over their issues with one another to better the world around them while just absolutely pulling at your heartstrings and maybe wrap a blanket around you and sip some tea, watch Stepmom. Fantastic movie.
There are a number of scenes outdoors, and we're not running anything because it's been around for so long, but one where Susan Sarandon is smoking weed outdoors, wrapped up in a blanket. Another one where I think she's having wine. Maybe another one where she's having coffee or tea. But she's
the whole mood, movie.
Yeah, she's the whole mood. The only one that you never become annoyed with, that you're endeared to the entire time, is who?
Oh, I don't know. It feels like an opinion to me.
The little boy.
Oh, sure.
I mean, the little magician. Is just, oh my God, so adorable.
So if you thought I was going to be the one talking about bloodthirst horror movies and Deb was going to be talking about tearjerkers, you clearly do not listen to this podcast enough. Let's start the podcast.
Welcome to the Deb and Kev podcast. One is a Harvard Business School alum. The other is her son, discussing business, pop culture, family, and everything in between. Now here are your hosts, Deb and Kev.
Hey, hi, hello, and welcome to the Deb and Kev podcast. Sitting right there is the leader of this coven, Winifred Sanderson herself. It's my mom, Deb.
I'm Deb.
And that would make me Mary Sanderson, but I think of myself more as a Thackerby Binks. I'm her son, Kev, and this is our podcast. Shout out Hocus Pocus. On today's show, we will go to the tent and recap Biscuit Week for the Great British Bake Off. Deb will sit us down in front of the fireplace, we'll nuzzle up with some hot cocoa, and she'll talk to us about sick days and COVID in her business segment today. We have 3 freaking fantastic brand spanking new questions for Dear Debbie. And like an overprotective mother sending her child to school on the first cold day of the year, we'll wrap this episode up with what we are thankful for and what's for dinner. But first... Deb, it is Biscuit Week in the GBBO tent. You tried to shame me by not watching the episode with you earlier, but that doesn't mean that we're not prepared to talk about all the ins and outs of the chaos that is baking in England. Thoughts?
Well, I want to remind everybody who my 3 were just at the top of this. So, Cristal.
Yeah. Which Cristal reminds me of the very popular alcoholic beverage that rappers made famous in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Like the champagne.
Is it Cristal or Cristel?
Oh, it has an A. I don't know.
Doesn't have an A.
It's an E?
I think there's 2 E's.
Oh, maybe it is Cristel. I don't know. So Cristel, Freya.
Yep.
And
Giuseppe.
So now.
And my girls are the exact same, except I subbed out the Italian for the German. Jurgen.
So
the Jurgen German.
I want to say this. Giuseppe and Freya do not disappoint.
Okay.
There's no question. Just because.
Are you just talking in general?
Their personalities. Okay. They continue on to week 2. I would pick them again.
Got it.
Okay. Cristal was a little didn't get much editing good time this week. What do you think? I mean,
here's what I'm going to say. Let's start at the very beginning, and then we can deep dive into how all of the contestants perform.
Perfect.
As I said, it's Biscuit Week. And as Americans, biscuits to us mean something different than biscuits to the English. When we think of biscuits, we think of down-home Southern cooking big, plump biscuits either as rolls for dinner or that you somehow add more carbs to in the form of gravy, and then maybe there's some sausage in there, and then you put an egg on top. Not those biscuits.
Well,
these
or the
biscuits,
light, fluffy biscuit that we put butter, just to eat on the side.
Like I referenced for dinner 5 seconds ago?
Okay, fine.
Nice.
Sometimes I don't listen well.
These biscuits are actually cookies. The English refer to biscuits as cookies. And so we are going to be dealing with cookies in the tent this week. I was watching this and I first thought, Deb, you and I don't bake. But at any point, do you feel compelled to bake anything that you see on this show?
Well, no.
No.
Well, okay.
The answer is no.
No. Like last week, every once in a while there is something. The little mini rolls, I could feel compelled.
No shot will you ever bake those.
Kevin, I've made them in the big form.
Deborah, at no point will you feel compelled to make a mini roll.
We'll see.
Before the end of your time on this planet. No
never know.
Shot. Because I'm sitting there and I think you and I, for a lot of times when we watch cooking shows, we'll say, oh my God, we can do that. We'll sub this out. We'll put that in and we can absolutely bake that or cook that. And then we might actually go cook it.
True.
Never once have I thought I could do that. And now I'm going to go do that.
But here's the other part for you and I. I made those muffins the other day that we really like.
Yep.
I just really don't enjoy baking.
At all.
And so, I don't find chopping, dicing, getting everything ready for a meal like that. Any kind of prep, I'm going to say, of meal food doesn't bother me. In fact, I find it kind of cathartic.
Sure.
I like it, right? Measuring teaspoons and stuff is so annoying to me.
And I'm pretty sure we have mentioned this before, but at the risk of being redundant, it's been a year. Baking is so formulaic. It's science, and you don't do well with hard, rigid rules. And that's what baking is. In order to get the best end product, that's what you have to follow. I'm her child. I'm the exact same way. So I never feel compelled to do what they do. But that being said, the signature bake was a brandy snap with a filling. If you don't know what a brandy snap is, honestly, what it reminds me of is you just make caramel and then you add a flavoring to caramel. And then the brandy snap is nothing more than a vessel for what's the filling inside of the brandy snap. And I can say that it's nothing more than a vessel because you can do and manipulate the brandy snap into any shape you want it. It can be a cup. It can be a basket. It can be a cone. It can be a cannoli roll. It's just the vessel to get the filling into your mouth, and it has to be round. That's it.
The brandy snap often has some crushed up nuts in it, doesn't it?
Nope.
Oh, it doesn't?
Not at all.
Okay, so one of the things that I thought when they were making their shapes, this was an overwhelming thought this whole week. Can we just make it easy on ourselves? People, you don't have to make it this hard and still win. Like, did you see, if you saw what Jurgen did?
Jurgen?
He just had it look like little glasses or little baby milk bottles, and he literally just plopped his round brandy snap on top of them and let gravity take hold to make a basket.
Right, and so it's
no work. While the rest of them are trying to wrap it around something and mold it to be something.
Well, and that's what I'm saying is it can be so many things. Why would you pick the complicated thing?
Right.
Make the brandy snap, bake it until it gets bubbly, pull it out, let that lace form, and then while it's still warm, shape it. And the most successful people were the ones who let it be a basket, which I also referred to as a cup. The people who tried to make the cannoli rolls, the people who tried to make the cones struggled because they were trying to manipulate it too much.
Well, and also think through this, folks. If you do the basket or the nest or whatever that little shape is, that also actually reveals the contents much better than it being trapped inside of something. I mean, you get to really see it, which I guess is a good, bad thing. But I mean, the people that went to all that other trouble, it was ridiculous.
I agree with you. So the thing that I liked about that dessert, though, in particular, was everything was entirely gluten-free. There was not an ounce of gluten in any of it. So when I think about what I should be making for desserts, I should be making brandy snaps. I will never, ever make a brandy snap, but I should be making them. And after that signature bake, I think the writing is on the wall with a lot of these people already.
Yeah.
On the bottom, we had Amanda, who was on the bottom last week.
Yep.
We had Jairzinho, who was on the bottom last week.
Yep.
And then your girl, Maggie, who you rightfully stayed away from because typically as this competition gets further and further down the line, the older folk, not shaming older people, but the older folk tend to struggle because they realize it's a little more faster pace. They have to get out of their comfort zone and they tend to overthink things. So those three were clearly...
The time management kills the older folks.
We're clearly at the bottom. And then on the top, we had Christelle, Giuseppe, Chigs, and Jurgen. So the exact same ones who had been successful the week before.
Yeah.
Then we move on over to the technical. And the technical comes from Paul, and it's a sandwich jammy biscuit.
And I love that. We call it a cookie. I've had that cookie before.
So it's a shortbread cookie with jam filling, raspberry filling, buttercream, and then another cookie to make a jam sandwich. And then you have a little heart cut out so that the jam is exposed. We have seen these 1,000 different times.
And it's a great, what I want to call it, it's a great basic cookie.
Agreed.
I mean, if the shortbread is good, if the jam is good, I've had it with like marmalade or apricot jam. That's terrific. It really is like a cup of tea or coffee and a cookie.
But the reason this technical is difficult, all of the ingredients themselves, super simple, right?
Yep.
Shortbread cookie, buttercream, jam. That's it. Those are the three main ingredients. But you have to nail all three of them. And then you have to do, Deb, what's a fluted cutter?
Well, the fluted cutter, it's like, if you know what the edge of a tart pan looks like, a fluted cutter cuts like the edge of a tart pan. And
almost like a scallop edge?
Like a little scalloped edge.
Thank you.
And here's the problem when you cut that. It's just a trap. The scalloped edging is a trap for the dough.
Yep.
Every time you put it down, it wants to come back up with the cutter.
And then you have to use a stamper. Deb, what's a stamper?
A stamper is the thing that you literally go over to take the heart out, right?
No. See, this is where it gets tricky. There's the fluted cutter, there's the stamper, and then there's the mini heart-shaped cutter. What's the stamper?
I don't know what the stamper is.
The stamper is, it looks like a literal stamp that you put on top of the now fluted cutted dough to give it those ridges that make it look like a shell.
Yeah.
So then you have to take the mini heart-shaped cutter, put it in the middle of it to take the mini heart out so that you can see the exposed jam in the form of a red heart. That's where it gets tricky. I have a question for you as it relates to the technical challenge.
Yeah.
Do you ever watch really the technical or any other bake and think that's where I would screw up? Right there, that moment is where I would screw up. Because I had that thought immediately, which was they made their shortbread cookie, they fluted it, they stamped it, they took the mini heart out, they combined everything. I would have forgot to
buttercream.
No, I would have forgot to frost the sugar sprinkle on top prior to the cookie being made, so that I would have put the powdered sugar on top and it would have covered the heart as well.
Oh,
you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. So here's the thing I thought, and I don't remember who it was, but I remember thinking their shortbread dough was a little soft because, shortbread dough has to be really crumbly and tacky to hold together, right? And if it's too soft, even if you manage to cut it out, then it like blows up a little bit on itself. And I thought that heart could close and there was somebody that did it, and I thought that was too soft. But no, if everything is right, that shouldn't be the hardest cookie in the world. It's just remembering to do it in sequence.
But see, that's the problem, because the instructions are not fluid. They're not normal instructions. And then I think to myself, I clearly don't know how to bake well enough to ever be a part of any competition. But if I had my wits about me as a decent amateur baker, I still identify my pitfalls. And one of my pitfalls would have been I would have not put the powdered sugar on prior to assembling the cookie.
Easy. I mean, that is a perfect example of just the easiest mistake that could have ruined it all.
And last week, the technical challenge actually yielded some fairly even results. This was not the case this week. It was a very, very, very large discrepancy between first and last. So on the bottom, kind of the same as the week before, we had Rashika, George, Jerzenio, and then Christelle was also at the bottom.
Yep.
But then at the top, Freya, Giuseppe, Jurgen.
Yep.
Two people who are not remotely British.
Yep.
Leading the competition. Then the final showstopper was a 3D biscuit replica of your childhood toy with an interactive element. Deb, if you had to make a 3D biscuit replica of a childhood toy with an interactive element, what would you have made?
So glad you asked.
Yes.
Because I figured that out.
Okay.
Because again, I thought you're all making it too hard.
Yeah.
I would have proclaimed my Jewish roots as a child. Maybe I don't have them, but I would have proclaimed when I was a young Jewish child.
You would have made you would have made a dreidel, huh?
I would have made a dreidel.
I can remember growing up in Germany.
So here's what I would have done. The big dreidel would have been so easy to make.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Okay, and it would held together. It would look.
You were really going to make a dreidel?
For sure.
Oh my gosh, I just lied. I didn't know that's what you were going to make.
For sure. And then what I would have done is I would have made some little dreidels around the big dreidel. And in the little dreidels, I would have made the center the hard Rice Krispie treat with the biscuits around it. And you could have picked one up and twirled it and it wouldn't have fallen apart. Thought it all out already. Dreidel all day long.
Little Debbie Leibowitz over here.
Yep. And who's going to crush a little Debbie Leibowitz, you know?
So I thought about that too. And I thought, well, obviously the one toy that was like my toy was a stuffed monkey.
Yeah, you couldn't have done the stuff.
A sock monkey.
Yeah.
So and then I thought like, what could I have done that was interactive? I think I would have done probably what Giuseppe did and made a board game with all the moving pieces.
Yeah.
Because I don't know. I mean, I grew up in the 80s and 90s. We had like games,
right,
you know,
right.
like we had Game Boys. We had, you know, guns. We had like real game stuff.
Yeah.
And if I would have tried to tackle that, I would have been.
And probably a producer would have pulled you aside and said, you can't make a gun.
True.
Yeah. You know.
I would say this. As it relates to the showstoppers that I've seen this season and prior, the results were either fantastic or horrendous. I have never seen something so bad before in the same exact challenge as something so good.
So this was my thought today, that some of these people actually got picked up by the wrong show and they should be on Nailed It, because
Great call.
they are no better than the Nailed It people.
I mean, people had stuff breaking and falling and crumbling, and then other people were creating these massive statuesque type biscuits that were fully mobile.
So when, like, if you talk about when you knew it was going to go wrong,
Yeah.
when I think, you know, Noel is the voiceover for the explanation of their thing. And he says, so Amanda is going to take a turn here and not use a British gingerbread. She's going to make an American sugar cookie. Nobody thinks a sugar cookie can hold up for anything like that.
A sugar cookie, man.
I
No.
mean, not unless you burned the crap out of it. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm just sorry, it wouldn't work.
And it led to, stop me if you've heard this before, on the bottom, Amanda, Jerzenio, and Maggie. And at the top, Christelle, Freya, Giuseppe, Jurgen, and Rashika. Do any of those names sound familiar in those exact same spots?
So I want to give a shout out. I was actually, as soon as you hear a drill going with over there in Jurgen's desk, you know, like it's, you know, come on. But I'm
going to get to Jurgen in a second.
He did not decorate that windmill. So I kind of had feelings about that windmill. But
there was nothing that said it needed to be decorated. It needed to be a 3D biscuit replica that had an interactive element.
I'm saying Christelle's makeup box.
That was cool.
Was
Very cool.
Unbelievable. I mean, I don't think that they expounded on it enough for how good it looked. And then they said the flavors and everything were terrific. So she would have been my winner. But
do you remember what Paul called Jurgen? I wrote it down.
Say it.
Konditormeister.
Oh, yeah. What is that?
Pastry chef. But it sounds so much more authoritarian than anything else.
Yeah.
So, needless to say, the person who got sent home was Jerzenio. And I think they sent him home because A, he was horrible, and B, he had absolutely zero time management. And they will not give somebody else a second chance when you have proven now over 2 episodes that you cannot in any way control the time.
So rightfully so, I say. He was the one that should have gone. And if Maggie and Amanda don't feel like they're holding on by the skin of their teeth.
It's Amanda next week.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, but I will say Amanda does this thing, which Laura did a little bit last time. Remember how Laura was a really messy baker?
Oh, yeah.
And she would go, oh, I'm so messy and this doesn't look good. Amanda has a little bit of that. Then they go.
Except Amanda doesn't produce anything like Laura does.
Well, that's kind of true, except they usually always love her flavors, like a lot. And so she's got to tighten it up. I mean,
I agree.
But yeah.
She's going to go.
And Maggie's out of her element already.
If Amanda gets out of week 4, I will be floored.
Well, either she or Maggie will, but.
And then the star baker, 2 for 2, my guy, the Konditormeister, Jurgen. And then finally he made the phone call to his family to let them know that he was star baker. Last week, nobody answered apparently. This week he calls and somebody picks up and goes, hello, Robert. it's Jürgen. That's his son. Robert is his child. Okay. He goes, it's Jürgen. I want Star Baker again. It's just like the most German interaction.
Normally you hear the family screaming and shouting.
And Robert, and you hear this, ho, 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 are you serious? It's on the other line. And then he puts his wife on. He's like, I want Star Baker again. She's like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. Or something. It's just like no emotion.
Yeah.
Nothing crazy. And this is where I would say the Great British Bake Off has a German problem. Germans, structured.
Yeah.
He's an engineer.
Yeah.
They are literally groomed to do stuff in particular order and execute it well. If he doesn't win, I will be floored. You had Lizzie in there saying that they gave them hours to practice bakes, and she ended up coming to the tent, getting ready to practice, and then they put Harry Potter on, and she just stopped working and started watching Harry Potter. And Jürgen made his own chai concoction for one of the bakes. And I'm thinking, these two people are in the same competition. Can I cash my Jürgen check already, please?
But if you remember last season, Peter was kind of a little young Jürgen-ish, but
not even close.
But wait. But I mean, he started out really strong, did really well. Then in the middle, Peter kind of fell apart a little bit. Is this going to be boring if Jürgen just presses through and wins?
War machine. He is taking GBBO and he is channeling his German roots, and he is going to plow all the way to England to plant his flag in the form of a victory.
I'm not going to disagree with you because I do feel like that is a possibility.
It's the possibility.
But I'm not sure that's the joy we want. I mean, like, is Jürgen going to go on Instagram?
Wait a minute. You're going to try to tell me that you're not going to be happy that somebody deserving of this competition wins the competition?
Here's the difference of the way you see Jürgen and the way I see Jürgen.
I picked him.
They showed a black and white picture. I said to you, did you see that black and white picture of Jürgen? You said, boy, was he a good-looking guy.
And if we're tapping into Deb's Jewish roots right here, here we go, Devin. What did you say? What did you say, little Leibowitz?
For a Nazi.
Exactly. Deb's got a lot of hate in her heart.
No, I do not.
Germans have hurt her family.
I don't think Jürgen is a Nazi.
And her religion, her deep-rooted Jewish
roots. My
roots.
dreidel was offended. Yeah. I'm going to say that for sure.
So I don't think Jürgen's a Nazi. I just think Jürgen is probably engineered to do this and this competition extremely well, the likes of which has never been seen. And if they bring in another German, they're going to make sure that it's the type of German who goes to underground clubs and is more anti-establishment than the type of German who could probably single-handedly construct a submarine off of memory.
I do want to give a nod, and I want people to pay attention to Freya. Why
are you giving nods to people who don't listen to this podcast?
Whatever her last word is, she drags it out for about 4 syllables.
Oh, like when she says cappuccino.
Cappuccino. And then, I mean, it'll be like the last word was please. And she went, please. Yep. I mean, it's got this like funny British accent on it, and it's drug out 4 or 5 syllables, but it's only just the last word that really goes on and on and on.
All right. If you haven't watched, don't listen to that part. If you have watched, hopefully you agree with me that watching an outright dynasty form in the form of Jürgen is something that we can all agree on.
Okay.
All right, Deb, talk to us as we head into the fall months and the winter months about sick days, maybe sick days leading into COVID, and how business managers, business owners can properly address them, combat them, work within them, and all that comes with the chaos of somebody calling in sick, even though it's their right as an American citizen to do so.
Oh, of course they get to call in sick. The question is whether or not they get paid for it. That's really the big question.
Here we go. Okay? Here comes German Deb.
So one of the things that happened that kind of disrupted our whole sick thing and how we work was COVID, not just because COVID was a thing, it is a thing, but also because the government intervened and said you had to give up to 2 weeks paid off to people for COVID related things. Now that could have been, I had to stay home to take care of you because you had COVID.
Yep.
They had to pay me. I mean, we don't see that kind of intervention for that length of time paid. What we're also assuming is that people, let's just say for the sake of discussion, that I had 2 weeks paid, whether we want to call it PTO or vacation. Let's make it 3 weeks. So let's say it's technically 2 weeks of vacation and 1 week of sick time. But for this conversation today, we're just going to call it PTO, personal time off, and I can mix that 3 weeks up for anything I want. So in that case, people technically had 5 weeks off in 2020, right? I mean, because the feds intervened if 3 weeks was in fact the number. What also happened is we had people that were like, okay, I think I can work part-time at home. Some businesses that worked, some businesses it didn't.
Yep.
Some businesses it was very blurry lines. Some businesses it was really cut and dry. Then we had like, oh my gosh, I got COVID. I used my 2 weeks, but now 2 of my kids have COVID. They can't go to school. So COVID really kind of changed everything that everybody did. And a lot of businesses didn't sit down and really say, okay, these are our COVID hard and fast rules. So what I would encourage people to do, only because I'm running into this all the time, right now it seems like we're October 1st, so we're in the last quarter of the year. And we have a lot of cases, it looks like, where people have used up all of their time.
Technically, it's October 4th.
Okay, and we still have a quarter to go, all right? So then that people say to me, well, shall I give them time off without pay? Well, I mean, that's a question like, does your company do that? Because if you nonchalantly give people time off without pay, now your company does it and they have to do it for everybody.
Oh, wow.
So a lot of times you can't nonchalantly do that for somebody in a tough situation without creating, a standard now that could be referred to for everybody else. Did you intend to give everybody else another 2 weeks off, paid or not, right? So one of the things that I think that companies need to have, everybody should have a COVID policy by now. If you think you've been exposed or if you've tested positive, this is what you do. Blah, 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 blah. And if there are guidelines you're supposed to follow within your state or within your county, I would say base them around that. But, do have something that everybody knows. That's number one. And know whether or not they're getting paid for that time or not. Like, we're just going to call that COVID time, right? Because now the feds have no longer mandated that we need to give paid time. Those 2 weeks are gone. They kind of expired in 2020. So what are we going to do? So if you say to somebody, you have 3 weeks of PTO, and somebody was in and out because of COVID-related things, which is happening. You see that happening. They could literally use up all their time by just sitting home doing nothing, quarantining, not even really being ill, possibly being contagious, and never have really gotten any, what I'm going to say, fruitful, good, fun time off, right? So what do we need to do? I think number one, you have to have a policy for COVID-related things and look at that as separate than vacation and sick time and PTO. And I'm not saying you have to pay anybody for it. I'm just saying have it laid out. Because in a lot of cases, these people are staying home and they honestly don't feel bad. And if you can negotiate something with them like, look, if you'll do this project work while you're home, if I can funnel phones to you while you're home, if you can literally make use of them while they're at home a little bit, then pay them that portion if it's unpaid. That take opportunity of them because they literally are just sitting at home, right? Obviously, if they're really sick, they need to be sick and tended to and, so they can get on to the mend. But if you have, let's say, 15 days of PTO, when those days are done, when they are over, and people say, I'm sick, or it's my daughter's graduation, or this wedding came up, and they ask for unpaid time, you have to decide if you want to walk into the murky waters of unpaid time. If you do, then make it available for everybody, but put a time limit on it. So I know a company that says, we're giving you 15 days PTO. That's your vacation and your sick time. We don't care how you use it. It's yours, okay? They also give 5 days of unpaid. So you can ask this, you can designate that that's my unpaid day. I'm taking 5 days of unpaid. When those total of 20 days are exhausted, if you don't come to work, it then becomes a performance issue. So they've drawn a hard and fast line of 15 days paid, 5 days unpaid, Now you don't come to work, we've got a problem. And therein lies the issue. Attendance is at some point a performance issue. Meaning, don't you remember when we were kids, I never missed a day of school and the kid would get a little award, right? Yay.
Nobody liked that kid, by the way.
Nobody liked that kid. And I was never that kid. Wasn't even on my radar. Didn't even want it for my kid because I took him to a movie in the middle of 4th grade. So that is an award. That's not an award that we valued in our family.
Clearly not. Certainly not by high school at all. Especially when brother Phil, who was my first period religion teacher, sent a note home that said Kevin had been late to or missed 16 first period classes, to which you said 16 classes. And I said, you let me sleep in. And you're like, oh yeah, you got to go to class now.
We were overall a bad family when that stuff came,
Yep.
So I'm just saying, really think it out. Now, if I'm an employer, what am I thinking about? What does it look like if every single one of my employees have 15 days off or have 20 days off? Does it make a big deal? In some cases, yes, it would be huge. In other cases, I can put some parameters around those, right? I can say, if you're taking a week at a time, meaning vacation, I really want several weeks' notice so that I can, because that's a big chunk of time off and everybody deserves their vacation. Obviously, if somebody's calling in sick today, they're sick today. But again, if you feel yourself coming down with something the night before, just text your boss and say, I have a feeling, I'm not feeling very good. Those 5 days can add up to a lot if you choose to do the unpaid time. It can add up to an awful lot. So you've got to see if your company can manage it. It doesn't cost you anything financially, but it does cost you in terms of the whole team is not there and present. And can you do it? But I really do think with COVID now, starts with your COVID policies, whatever they are. Everybody should be able to recite them out loud. If this happens, then that happens and that happens. That's number one, make them abide by state and county laws. Number two, determine what the time off really is, what you're going to call it, and the parameters that people get to use it. And then after that, attendance is a performance issue.
So what I'm hearing is we live in a new day and age where sickness is not just sickness anymore. It can be something far worse, far more contagious, and far more deadly to the workplace. And if you are smart enough, if you have enough forethought to that, you've already baked that, shout out GBBO, into the happenings of your business. Meaning you get your normal sick days off. If it's COVID related, we've put that into the formula as well. And if you need additional days off unpaid, perfect. We have allotted for that too. But when all of that gets coupled together and there's nothing left, and now you're still coming back to us and asking for more time off, now we have a greater issue. We have something large that we need to address, and that is whether or not your attendance can actually be managed to the point that we can count on you. And if it can't, now we have to have a conversation about whether or not this is the right place for you, because it just might not be. And that's not indictment on you as a person, just as you as an employee as it relates to this business.
I agree. And I think that literally, you can look at your staff, and if you happen to have, I'm just going to say, a lot of working moms and kids are in school, I'm going to look at it and go, there's going to be a higher incidence maybe of COVID related in and out here. So what do I want to do for them? And I might want to give them a ton of time, but also arrange it where they can do work from home as much as possible. I'm just saying, design it and make it equitable to everybody. The last thing I'm going to say is this: know where people can get COVID shots. COVID tests. Know every health department has a different deal. It's from the day of exposure or the day of a symptom until whenever. Know those rules. So really know and have that material available for people, call the health department, because one of the things we know, people will go to CVS and get one of those little COVID tests, and that doesn't count as a test where you get to come back to work. It has to be an official test that was really read by an official person that gives you a piece of paper that is certified that you are in fact negative. So make sure that your staff knows for your area the places they have to go and the protocols that have to be followed.
And I'm going to say this: if you think you don't have this issue and that you don't need to somehow implement this and that your business is immune from this exact conversation, still do it. still do it. Because whether or not we're dealing with COVID in the next 6 months or the next 6 years, it will eventually come to your door, even if it's not COVID, even if it's just sickness. Put the framework of this into your business model today so that you are ready for it if it ever comes. And even if we get through COVID, and even if we're all just now dealing with the normal cold and flu season, somebody at some point will push the boundaries that you want to give leeway to. And if you are making it up as you go, as opposed to having done the legwork today after listening to this episode, it's going to be infinitely easier for you because you can just go research it and refresh yourself as to what were the standards of practices that we decided to implement after listening to the Deb and Kev podcast. Boom, here they are. And then you can share that with the employee the exact same day they ask for more time off, even if they don't have it. And then everybody's operating from the same playbook.
And we've successfully removed the emotion from it.
1,000%. Let's get into some Dear Debbie questions. Are you ready, Debbie? Because these questions are for you. They weren't for you, but they are for you now.
As ready as I'll ever be.
Dear Debbie, at my job, we've just begun to go to the office a couple of days a week. During the remote period, we hired some new staff in our company. I was looking forward to finally meeting everyone and having in-person interactions with them, even in a limited capacity. However, one of the new employees seems to be flirting with me, and I'm not interested. He keeps complimenting me and has tried to inquire about my personal life. I chalked it up to him being awkward and nice, but now he will text me after work hours and has asked me to get coffee sometime. Am I being paranoid? Does this guy just want a friend because of quarantine, or is he looking for love? Either way, how should I approach the situation? I don't think I'm looking for an office romance. Well, the last sentence makes me think, well, maybe you are looking for an office romance and it's not just this guy?
If we're talking about romance, it's just the wrong guy. She's not attracted to him, okay? But I don't know, somebody asking you, it didn't sound like he said anything weirdly bizarre or insinuated anything romantic. It sounds like for some reason she felt it. Her guard went up right away.
Yep.
But all he's done, if we just base it on his actions, is been friendly and invited her for coffee. So I would say, if it were me, and we all have those feelings for no good reason, right? Without evidence.
Sure.
But I would probably go to the coffee. I might not text him back in the evening if it were after hours, if I wanted to draw that kind of boundary. But then I would probably accept the coffee invitation to really see where it looked like that was going. Because really, if he's just lonely and getting out of quarantine and it's really a pal, and let's say like he liked her over Zoom, meaning he just enjoyed her or whatever. Check it out. I think with the information she has, I'm not going to say she's paranoid, but I'm going to say her reaction might be incorrect.
And this is kind of where I fall. Let's assume this guy looks like Steve Buscemi. Okay, nice enough, but let's assume he looks like Steve Buscemi. She's probably not interested in Steve Buscemi, and that's totally fine. Nobody's saying that she should be interested in Steve Buscemi, but just because a guy looks like Steve Buscemi doesn't mean that he's
not the greatest guy on the planet.
Exactly, and still not 1,000% harmless. He's new. Maybe you have tenure, and maybe he's simply looking at you as a resource to be able to better do his job, something he hasn't had access to for however long. And now he says, oh my gosh, real people who have done this, who can at least point me in the right directions. And she seems nice. She was kind. She was courteous. Why can't I go lean on her a little bit? And if your assumption is that the only thing you can offer to him is your good looks in a relationship, well, you're diminishing what you're bringing to the table. So don't just assume that just because, I'm assuming it's a woman, don't assume that just because he is asking you to go do something outside of normal work hours, that it is not work related. Conversely, would we be having this conversation if we subbed out Steve Buscemi with Chris Hemsworth? Because Chris Hemsworth might be asking you the exact same thing, but now you're hoping Chris Hemsworth doesn't want to talk about work, that Chris Hemsworth wants to talk about you and who you are and all that you offer in the form of a relationship. So instead of putting the cart so freaking far ahead of the horse, why don't you take him up on what you assume to be a congenial professional offer? And then if it turns into something romantic, you can say, hey, I honestly thought this was going to be about work. I'm not in a place now where I'm interested in having any type of romantic relationship, especially with somebody that I work with. But moving forward, if at any point in time you have more questions about work and the workplace and how I can help you, great.
I feel like this just turned from Dear Debbie to Dear Kevy.
Well, because I think that's super duper unfair to the guy.
I agree wholeheartedly. I also want to say, I think he came on during the pandemic. Yeah. That's what she told us. I also think the relationship that you form as a new person, remember he's the new guy, on Zoom or on the phone is entirely different. Meaning when you see them in person, you feel like you know them a little bit, but you don't really. Zoom isn't what real life is with body language and, all the innuendos of everything that comes with being with somebody in person. So I think she's being a little, making a lot of assumptions. And I think this could just be a great guy and potentially a good friendship. And if it is something more, because he has not indicated that at all, if it is something more, cross that bridge when we get to it and leave it at that.
Yeah. Maybe just let people be people.
Yeah.
And then make the decision after you actually get to know them.
Yeah. Like I don't want to go to coffee with just a good human being.
Right.
Yeah. Crazy.
That's where the roles can get a little twisted.
Yeah.
Dear Debbie, this is your wheelhouse, by the way.
Okay.
I've been looking to hire a part-time assistant to help me get a project off the ground. Considering how many people are out of work, I figured if I posted the position on social media, I would get a few candidates. I did. And a few people responded, but nobody seemed eager to work hard. For example, when I wrote back to people to set up interviews, it took them days to respond. One woman sounded interesting, but she wasn't willing to work enough hours. Another man I gave a chance, but he never could show up to our morning meetings on time. I think I may need to go to one of those services that have already vetted people in order to feel confident. Whatever happened to good old-fashioned work ethic? Well, work ethic has nothing to do with the people that you've spoken to thus far. But there is a bigger issue at play here, for sure.
So one of the things that happens, and I'm not opposed to people using social media at all, but it sounds like what we're missing, the information we're missing for this woman is what transpired between her posting and her hiring. And she doesn't mention that at all. It sounds like maybe she met them, thought they were great, and hired them. And therein lies the problem. Because I know when I recommend like hiring protocols, they are tested every step of the way. The people, if somebody didn't show up for an interview, I say it all the time, they're dead to me. If somebody can't return a phone call, they're dead to me. Judge them during and vet them during the hiring process and build some things in there that they have to do.
Because why? Because that's when they should be the best version of themselves. That's when they should be lying at every step because they know that maybe they don't actually possess this skill set, but if they need this job, then that's the skill set they need to assume to get through these very, very first entry points. And if they can't do it then, there is no way in hell they're going to be able to do it 6 months from now or 12 years from now when they've been working for you. It's not going to happen.
Well, and when somebody, and you and I have talked about this, about when employers have a habit of being untimely with job postings. I post it and I'll get to it in a week or so. The good ones are gone. Don't even bother. That posting is like terrible now. In today's world, everything is immediate gratification. If I'm looking for a job now, I'm looking for a job now. I don't want somebody calling me 2 weeks later about a job I applied for. I may not even know what it is, depending on how many I've applied for. So I really do think it's the responsibility of the person that's looking for somebody new to stay on it and keep it moving. The other part is, and you and I have talked about this, we look at everything as a little red flag to us along the way. And so people can fall out. We just had a situation recently where we were helping somebody hire and we almost undid, I almost did, you didn't. I said, I know none of these people, we were so slim on candidates. I said, I know none of these people did what we asked. Literally none of them. But should we go back? And you looked at me and said, my pride says no.
Can you imagine? I bet I can't fathom being an employer and then going and groveling to somebody as the second interaction you have with them.
Yeah.
You put a job posting up. They responded to it. You said, hey, can you send me some more information? Nothing. So now I'm going to go to you who I don't know, who clearly doesn't care enough about this job. And I'm going to say, hey, maybe you didn't see this, but I'd love to hear some more information. You've already painted yourself in the corner. You've already established to that person that they can get away with some stuff.
And that they're in charge.
Yep.
That the balance of power in the relationship tips in their direction.
Totally.
So I just think with the story that we have from her, I don't think it's about work ethic. I think it's about the homework she did with the candidates prior to offering them a job. But I also want to say this. I need a personal assistant. It's only part-time. I suspect she hasn't clearly defined what that role even is.
I would agree with you as well. I think if you're turning to social media, you're the first people you're going to get are friends and family, and then you're going to get total strangers. Yeah. And total strangers are fine. But if you do not have the formula or do not have the thorough enough description of what the expectations are for everybody, and you've just turned to social media to let social media do what it does, it's no wonder you're going through all of these people and nobody's working out because you're not vetting them. People are responding to you and you're like, okay, great. Do you want to come working? It's like, what kind of process is that? That is in no way constructive for you or them or the project you're working on.
I agree. I agree wholeheartedly.
Thank you. Dear Debbie, this is one that I had weeks ago. I don't remember what it says, so we're just going to go with this, okay?
Let's do it.
Dear Debbie, my spouse and I were invited to dinner at the house of a couple with whom we are very close. Another couple whom we didn't know well was actually cooking the dinner. Before dinner, I made some remarks about how hungry I was and couldn't wait to eat. When we sat down for dinner, I was 3 bites into my dressing when I discovered a hair in the food. Do you think dressing means salad or dressing like in stuffing?
Let's just go with salad.
I discreetly removed it from my mouth with my napkin, but was repulsed and couldn't eat anymore. My host kept asking why I wasn't eating when I had just recently proclaimed how hungry I was. I responded by saying I was full or I had had enough. On our way home, my spouse asked why I had stopped eating. When I told him, he was upset that I continued to let him eat the food, knowing what I had found. If the food had been prepared by our friends, I could have been honest with them about what I found and even laughed it off. Since the food was prepared by the couple we didn't know, I did not say anything. Was I in a no-win situation?
That story just has so much wrong with it, I want to scream. Number one, okay?
This is where I know I don't occupy the same planet as other people.
Yeah, me either.
This is such a nothing burger, zero. Yep. It is nothing. That shouldn't have even registered with you on a level of importance, let alone something that you thought about often, that you then had to talk to your husband about, that you then felt compelled to write in on an opinion for. This is welcome to the world where human beings cook food for other humans, and sometimes hair ends up in it, and that's not ideal, certainly not ideal, but you friggin' deal with it.
One of the things that makes us upset about hair in our food, and hair in our food does make us upset. Let's just all agree with that. But one of the things, if you're in a restaurant, you're like, where did that hair come from? I mean, we don't know. One of 100 people back there in the kitchen or somewhere else. That's part of the whole hair thing that, at least for me, it's like, where did it come from? Hair in food where I literally am at somebody's house, so I know one of the 3 people that prepared the food, is a little bit different. Here's the other thing that's different. The people that prepared the food are sitting at the dinner table with me. I don't want to embarrass or humiliate them. The worst hair thing I ever had in my life. Went home for a weekend of college with a girl. This girl had the most beautiful, almost to her waist, long dark hair, as did her mother, as did her sister. They just had gorgeous hair. We're eating pasta. There is this hair. I see it in the food. I try to just scoot it over on the plate. It's so frickin' long. I can't. So now I'm just trying to get it out of my pasta and have no one pay attention to me, right? I'm dragging this hair with pasta sauce on it around the plate, just trying.
And it keeps growing and growing and growing.
And it keeps growing. I'm doing nothing, but I do become a little mesmerized with it. The mother looks over, sees what's happening, stands up, yells, goes, oh my God, we're so sorry. I'm like, no, we're good. I just want to get that out of there. She said, absolutely not. Went and dished me up a new plate of food. And it was like right as rain. Okay.
Yeah.
I understand the hair went in her mouth for all of you that are saying, but the hair went in her mouth. I understand that. It's still only, she knows the 2 people. They're sitting in front of her, the people that cooked. Like, you literally just take it out of your mouth. Get a grip. be grateful for these lovely human beings that have invited you to their home and the lovely people who have prepared this food, and keep eating. This is crazy.
This is that weird level of shame that people have. How are you, the person who has ingested hair, the wrong party? You're the wronged party. You get to say, I found hair in my food. Can I just get it? Can I just get a new dish? Because let's be honest. What about that single strand of hair is going to cause death? Nothing. Literally nothing. It's not appetizing. It might ruin your appetite. But instead, what you did is you took the hair out of your mouth, you set it aside, and then you looked like the total narcissist or liar or self-centered, entitled person.
Your food. Right.
Instead of just saying, hey, by the way, there was a hair in this. I need a couple minutes. I think I'll get my appetite back. But, the hair thing just kind of freaks me out. That's better than sitting there silent. That's better than literally everybody around the dinner table now knowing that there's some unspoken issue that you're holding on to, when it's like, we've all had hair in everything. Yeah. And for the most part, listen, I could be cut from the different cloth than other people. The hair stuff doesn't bother me because it's a fact of life. If you're going to deal with people cooking your food, your number's going to be up at some point. You're eventually going to have hair in your food.
If the people were preparing it with hairnets on, I mean, seriously, they're in somebody's home. And I think you're right. You can go put your napkin up to your mouth and say, just give me a second, or even just excuse yourself and say, give me a second, because here's what's going to happen. The minute you say there was a hair in my salad, the minute you say that, the people who made it are going to be horrified. And their response to you should make everything better.
Right.
And the husband or boyfriend who said, oh, I wish you would have told me I ate. Like now they just
You're dumb, dude. You're an idiot. You're an absolute idiot.
They put a label on the whole dinner.
Yeah, you're a stupid person for saying that. You are giving credence to an absolutely irrational response from somebody. Because just because there's one hair in a salad or in stuffing, if that thing's baked, if that thing's cooked, if that thing's sauteed, there's nothing living on that hair anyways. You're all fine. You lived long enough to think that you needed to write an email about this. You're okay. Your boyfriend, I assume, is still alive and he's okay. Guess what? None of the other couples died either. They're okay. Yeah. This is that thing where it's like, can we all just agree that there are moments in life that we need to make big issues out of, and this is not remotely one of them?
Well, and the other part of it is, and I think that's when I tell that example of that long hair in the pasta, I was trying not to embarrass my hosts at any cost. That's what I was trying not to do. She didn't do that. I mean, she was like, oh my God, I ate it. I said I was starving, and now I'm going to sit here and not consume any food in the weirdest of ways. So she didn't think about her hosts at all. She only thought about herself.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. I clearly don't date anybody, but if I did date somebody and somebody turned to me and said that, I'd be like, what's your point?
Yeah.
What are we trying to get at here? Because I'm not going to get down on your level and freak out the way that you just did.
But we will also eat expired food. We're those people.
Well, I'll eat expired food. I won't if something's like a week old and it has some mold on it, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to cut that moldy piece off, and then I'm not going to just eat that food product raw. I'm going to cook it. That might not sit well with some of you. Here's the thing. Still alive. Strong as an ox.
No, but I'm talking about if the milk is expired and you smell it and it's perfectly fine, you'll drink it.
That's what I'm saying. But that's all the same thing. Like, I don't care if it's a week old milk. If it tastes, smells, and looks fine, I'm going to ingest that milk. Still alive. Still very much alive. You need one person in the relationship who won't eat expired food, and then you need somebody in the relationship who will eat expired food. Mm-hmm. And if you have two people in the relationship who don't eat expired food, you get emails like this.
Yep, that's exactly right.
All right, Deb, as we wind this thing down, what do you want to talk about? Food? Or do you want to talk about thankful?
Let's go food.
Do it.
I saw this thing that I'm going to try to recreate.
Yep.
It's a creamy, shrimpy, cheesy thing bubbling in a pan.
Shrimp scampi.
I don't think so, because there was a lot of sauce.
Baked shrimp.
I don't know. I'm going to figure it out. So it looked great. It was on Instagram, and it had tons of shrimp, which I like it when there's tons of shrimp.
Okay.
It looked like it was a nice thick sauce, but not heavy thick. And I was thinking, if we don't use pasta, or rice. We could do some zoodles or something like that.
Zoodles. Baked zoodles with shrimp.
We haven't done zoodles for a while.
Well, because we don't have zucchini, because the zucchini turns really fast. Wonderful. Baked shrimp, potentially with cream, maybe with zoodles, maybe with rice, definitely no pasta.
But we'll take a picture.
What are you thankful for the first week of October?
Well, we talked about this last Thursday a little bit, but I am so thankful for the weather. I'm just going to stay in the thankful of the weather until it turns cold, cold, cold. But it is fabulous here right now. You are wearing a fairly fall-themed attire today. I am.
And that fits well with your thankful.
Yep.
Here's what I'm thankful for. Netflix was taken by storm by a new Korean drama called Squid Game. They listened to Deb and they realized that Americans want foreign product right now. It is like Black Mirror meets K-pop meets something else. It's been the number one trending show for like the last, 10 days. Super interesting, super different. I know a lot of people don't like to watch television shows that are dubbed. I have to watch it dubbed and with subtitles. 8 episodes, 9 episodes, worth your time. But then what that allowed me to do is then have Netflix say, hey, Kevin, did you like Squid Game? Look at all these other Asian dystopian weird shows that you can watch. So I started watching those too. So it was just this door that I didn't know that I needed opened, which then allowed me to fill up my time with, absolutely bizarro television that in no other way would I have found if it probably weren't for this pandemic and Netflix saying, we have no original content. We need to go buy more shows. This family in Northern Nevada really likes watching dubbed international television. At least one of them does. Let's start pushing this to everybody. And it turns out to be the number one TV show, which then allowed me to go watch more Asian-related crazy TV shows.
It should be noted that when you labeled our Netflix, for mine and yours, mine is called Deb's Weird Foreign Films.
Yeah, sure. That sounds right.
And yours is called Kevin's Normal Film. You've now gone with me.
It was reluctant, but at the point that Netflix said, Kevin, we really know you're going to like this show.
Yeah.
Because your mom really likes all these other shows. I knew that I had to do it.
Yeah.
That's going to do it for this episode of the Deb and Kev podcast. Remember to like, rate, and review wherever you listen to this podcast. And you can follow us on all of our social channels at Deb and Kev Pod. And you can watch this here episode on our YouTube channel at Deb and Kev Pod. Mom, I love you to death.
Love you, baby.
We'll see you guys on Thursday.
Thank you for listening to the Deb and Kev podcast. Remember to like and subscribe wherever you listen to this podcast. Follow Deb and Kev on Facebook and on Instagram and Twitter at Deb and Kev Pod.